Hey, how's it going, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this week's astrological report for February 24 through March 2nd of 2026. This week we are halfway through eclipse season. We're going to be building to our next eclipse 1 week from today on Tuesday, March 3. The moon will become full and eclipsed in Virgo. This week, however, we're in between, and the moon has just ingressed Gemini last night and is making the first quarter square to the sun in Pisces. So we are entering a tension part of this eclipse cycle this week, conflict, and I'll explain more about that, the crisis and action point. But there is a little bit of a challenge with this current phase for the next 24 hours. The moon is also T-squared the nodes of fate today, so it's a fateful day on Tuesday. And the sun is also building towards the conjunction with the north node of destiny, and that will be exact by Friday. That's also a fateful point, and our future is really being lit up. Things that happen this week will have a long-term effect on the future, for good or bad. So we have that going on, the Mercury retrograde, and then the conjunction of the north node with the sun. On Friday, we also have Mars making that exact square to Uranus. So that's also a conflict that's in the background. There's a chance of some unpredictability and some attacks and some overall tension, conflict that we are going to be dealing with this week. Even though this is exact on Friday, it's within orb already, and so it's going to be playing out all week long. So that will affect overall people's mood, anger, tension and friction, and also military conflict and other aggressive acts that could be showing for the week ahead. And I think last week was a part of that. It's a part of this eclipse cycle as well. It's revolutionary, and there's some unpredictability that comes along with it, and some rebelliousness in the background this week. So we have that, and we also have Mercury. As it stops to go retrograde, Venus is catching back up with Mercury, and they make a conjunction on February 27. So that's a kind of another review process with this Mercury retrograde about what's of value. I'll talk more about that as I go through the charts. And it looks like we also have Mars reaching the last critical degree of Aquarius this week, and then we'll change signs and ingress Pisces by next Monday on March 2nd, right before the next eclipse. So we have a change of gears, change of what motivates us, how we fight, and how we generally take action here. It's going to be changing by next week. But this week, Mars is still in Aquarius. It's still about ideas, looking at things differently. And again, a little more of a rebellious vibe in the air, also adding more conflict for groups and community and friends and the social side of life. Also, of course, politics, science, technology has some tension this week with what's going on. So the moon will be waxing all through Gemini, all through Cancer, all through Leo, and coming into Virgo by next Monday and becoming full and eclipsed by next Tuesday. So those are all the major aspects. Check the description below. You can find them written out for you with exact times when they come exact and timestamps to follow along throughout the week. All right, so I'm going to get started here. On Tuesday, February 24, we start things off with the moon at 8 degrees of Gemini, making this T-square to the nodes of fate. So earlier this morning, the moon has already made that exact square to the sun, which again is the first quarter moon. The moon is half full up in the sky. And it's again the crisis and action phase. There's a challenge on how to move things forward, and there's a clash. There could be mood issues for people today, as the moon is now in a hard aspect with all of these planets the next 24 hours. So that just shows that this part of the cycle, it can show that people have to do something that they don't want to do, or there's just some complications in circumstances. There could be some challenges, some blocks. It's like I say every time we go through the first quarter, it's not a time to back down or give up. It's a time to be innovative and find creative solutions for any issues or blocks that do come up for you today or tomorrow. But it's also, if you are fumbling with something, if something isn't working out first thing on Tuesday, it's also fine to let it go. If you're able to kind of let the energy settle down, move past this dynamic, and then come back to it later. But just don't give up on whatever you're trying to do totally. But then now we're in this fateful crossroads for today with the moon squared the nodes of fate. Whatever is happening today, again, could put the world at a crossroads for a decision that could be fateful in some context, or whatever's happening is already having ripple effects for the future based on today's activities and circumstances generally in the world. Now, with the moon here in Gemini, the general mood wants to be more lighthearted, more playful, intellectual, communicative, doing a variety of different things, kind of taking things easy. But it's running into this energy that's behind the scenes, all this Pisces, which is super sensitive and intuitive and kind of more like a retreat kind of pull into people's own world. It's not as outward or social. So that's part of the conflict, perhaps, is people in their own world wanting to kind of retreat, rest, take it easy. There could be a lot of people tired or something here. We are going to need to rest really and save up our energy and prepare for spring when that sun reaches the equinox in Aries. Aries season is going to be very active, very busy, and we're going to need all the energy we can get for taking and initiating things coming up here in April. So in the meantime, usually this is more of a pull into behind the scenes and kind of being more inward. But the moon is clashing with that, as the moon is in an outward position here and intellectually stimulated and kind of an emotional mood for a lot of different variety of activity. All right, so that's the fateful moon that we have today. And let's go back to the list. So it does look like it's a bit of a challenging day for most people. It all depends on your birth chart, of course. As I say every week, it all depends on how these planets up in the sky are aligning with your personal planets. But generally speaking, today is a day of challenge that we have to move past. And this is the last aspect for the day, is this moon making that T-square first thing in the morning here, setting the tone for the rest of the day. So that is Tuesday, and we're going to move this forward and get to Wednesday on February 25. First thing, as we get to Wednesday, the moon is squaring Venus, and will also square Mercury, as Mercury is now pretty much stopped at its degree here. 22 degrees of Pisces is where it's retrograding. So it's pretty much stopped and not moving. So there's a part of the energy that's also stagnant and slow, for the first part of this week. Well, really all this week, Mercury's barely moving. It's going to take Mercury a few days to build up momentum the opposite direction. So it's pretty much just stuck here all week long. And the moon is now running into the final part of this first quarter. So first thing in the morning, early morning, moon square Venus, kind of a clash with mood and feelings and desires and needs and what's pleasurable. And sometimes this is a little more of a challenge to feel content or satisfied with what you're emotionally engaged in. It can be a little bit of a kind of a clash too with communications with people. Relationships might have a little bit of tension first thing in the morning, and then the way we're able to express or communicate is also running into a conflict here. I would suspect that traveling could have some issues with the moon in Gemini, ruled by this Mercury debilitated and stopping to go retrograde, plus the moon building that square to it. So there could be some issues this week about traveling and transportation on local areas or even bigger, longer distance travels. But this could also be like trains and buses and, just local travel could run into some issues or some technology glitches. It's possible. Some mishaps are possible. Miscalculations are possible. So just know there's a lot of tension, like I was saying, for this next 24 hours with this moon. And it's also, again, it's kind of intellectual versus intuitive. clashing with each other. There could also just be a bigger need, a bigger appetite for some sort of pleasure and indulgence, but it might have an issue of feeling completely satisfied and content with whatever's happening first thing on Wednesday morning. And then the moon will be squaring that Mercury, kind of initiating that stationary as we go through, first thing on Wednesday morning as well. So again, Wednesday, probably not the best day for publishing, broadcasting, doing material things like emails or errands, traveling, transportation. There could be some issues with school. I'm assuming, school should be open for kids, I guess. Could be some issue there. Again, this is nothing like super serious. It's just a part of the cycle that adds more friction between the mood and the feelings and the mind, thoughts, communication. They're on two different pages. Could be a little more challenging to express oneself or be understood. And the fact that Mercury is stopped here in station, it's more amplified than normal. It's more powerful. So there could also be a lot of like mental obsessiveness going on here, that's pulling people into their own world of thoughts and ideas. And then as the day goes on, the moon will make a sextile over to Chiron. For a few hours, that sextile is in play. So there can be a better mood about the self or feeling, just somehow better about the individuality, the self, independence, and people, Aries, versus the mood and the feelings of the day. And if you do have like any doctor's appointments or anything you need to take care of on a health level on Wednesday afternoon, I think that this sextile is helpful for that too. And then we also have the moon making a trine to Mars, which is still in the background, building up this square to Uranus. So it doesn't matter the day of the week, there's this background rebelliousness and turbulence and friction, that could pop off at any moment, any day this week. But with the moon making the trine to Mars, it opens up this good few hours on Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, depending on where you live, for action, being more emotionally motivated, inspired, instinctive, and passionate. So comfortable with the passion, the action, the social side of life, networking, groups, community. These things are in better alignment for Wednesday night. And then the moon is going to be changing signs, and it'll be a pretty big mood change overall as we get into late on Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. But technically, this will be on Wednesday night that the moon changes signs and ingresses Cancer for the next 2.5 days. So this is another activation of the global world dynamic that's going through a restructuring and a dissolving of the past. So right as the moon comes into Cancer, this is the new vibe that we're all going to have to get used to for Cancer. The moon squares Neptune and squares Saturn right off the bat. And so it really changes the flavor of the mood and the circumstances by late Wednesday night to be a lot more sensitive, not only because the moon is in Cancer, but also because it's squaring Neptune. And so, plus the square to Saturn can feel a little bit heavy, restrictive, limiting, kind of a mood, a heavier mood, the need to be more safe and secure for the next 2.5 days, but also adding some confusion, some tension, some uncertainty about self, family, relationships, home, and again, safety, security issues could come up a little bit here. Now, technically, that square to Saturn will be early morning on Thursday, so this is all happening really late on Wednesday, and that's when Mercury is officially stationing retrograde from this point forward. So the stationary is 22 degrees. If you have 22 degrees of Pisces in your chart, then you are highly connected to this Mercury retrograde. So you're going to want to pay attention to what is happening this week because, again, Mercury is pretty much stuck here at this degree all week long, activating what this is talking about. And Mercury will back away from it. And then once Mercury gets back to this spot and crosses over it, then we're moving out of the shadow and moving forward into new territory. But Mercury is going to be retrograde for the next few weeks here, and then take more time to move forward from that as well. So expect it to be long-term, reviewing, reflecting on things of the past. And now this is where, again, Pisces is trying to be updated and refreshed. This is a whole new Pisces compared to what we've been dealing with for the past 14 to 15 years, and especially the last 2.5 years with Saturn there. So we really need to get in touch with where we stand with Pisces and Virgo after multiple eclipses, and Mercury will be ruling that eclipse next week as well. And will continue to have us reflecting and reviewing and going back and completing things of the past. But I will say that this is a messy one. Mercury is already debilitated in Pisces, plus add the retrograde. And we're looking at we're just not very clear for some reason. We have to work out a lot of what we're processing individually from behind the scenes privately, So we're going to get more and more clarity as time goes on. But right now we have to go back. We have to look at things of the past, complete things of the past, and just generally reflect and review on situations. So everything about Mercury is a little bit more agitated, this week and beyond, including, again, technology, possibilities could go through some mishaps and traveling, communication mishaps. So just pay attention to what you're doing, because this can be super spacey and in your own world and not really paying attention to the details or the practical side of life. This can be much more imaginative or escapism and avoidance, or, this is kind of a messy time period, especially even with facts and details. We really don't have the clarity of details with information that we think we do, actually. But all this is, again, being set up for a review process starting from this point forward. Okay, now the moon is in Cancer and approaching Jupiter for this next couple days. But again, it really puts a big mood change in the air for people to be more, I would say, sensitive, guarded, protective, kind of more inward. Now we're like dominant water all of a sudden. So emotions and feelings and sensitivities are very strong once again. Again, people pulled into their home, their family energy, their own world from behind the scenes. And there's also a bigger need for nurturing, for healing, just kind of being in a more safe, secure place, in a more inward mood, generally speaking. And there is a little bit of a mood issue, or circumstances could, again, run into a little bit of an issue late on Wednesday. And then as we enter Thursday on February 26th, right off the bat, the moon is square Saturn. So we're picking up on this brand new dynamic in a way that feels a little bit uncomfortable, around safety and security issues. But this is the last square. Out of all these planets, the moon squared them all, and this is the last one that we reach by Thursday morning. So this day is probably a little bit easier after we get past that square, that mood issue, that heaviness, a little bit of weight there, first thing early morning on Thursday. And then the moon is in conjunct to Pluto as the day goes on, early morning hours. So we're having to adjust to the power dynamic out in the world with friends and group and community and organizations, and the social side, the political side. It's affecting the mood, the feelings, and the need for safety, security, and comfort as we go through early Thursday morning. But then the sun and the moon are now in a better alignment as we go through Thursday. Moon trine sun, this is part of the cycle that usually will show more cooperation. Things are easier, more flowing, less restrictions and blocks. Plus the moon is getting close to Jupiter. You can see it up in the sky this week. So that's just a better mood, better feelings. The inner world is on the same page as what we're focused on. Still emotional, still sensitive and watery. And then the moon is in alignment with the nodes of fate in an easy way. So another fateful day on Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. Moon trine the north node of destiny. There's a feeling that's we're connected to our future, the path that we're supposed to be on. There can be intuitive insights that has this connection to our future in some way. But regardless, it's fateful. And that is the last aspect for Thursday. But it looks like Thursday night, the moon is still like right next to Jupiter up in the sky, but officially doesn't make the conjunction until early morning Friday. So it's still kind of late Thursday night into Friday morning that moon Jupiter is up in the sky. Again, this is a pretty abundant position. It'll be even more abundant in another month when Jupiter is direct and the moon comes through here again. But this is still abundant. Moon Jupiter, big mood, big feelings, generosity, nurturing. It's home and family energy. Super late on, well, technically super early on Friday, February 27. First aspect is the moon Jupiter. So the mood, the feelings, the circumstances are flowing pretty well. But again, we have this background tension of Mars square Uranus. So with Mars square Uranus, we just never know when it'll be activated. It could be on the exact day that the square is perfect, but it could also be before or after. You just never know. So even though the day starts off pretty emotionally abundant with the moon Jupiter, we also have a lot going on here for Friday, including the sun reaching that north node of destiny. So it's a fateful, destined day. The focus is highlighting the future from behind the scenes. Whatever happens will have ripple effects for the future by Friday. And the Mars square Uranus really dominates the day. It's a kind of a chaotic day. It's revolutionary. There's a rebelliousness in the air. There's a possibility of an attack. You know, again, I can't promise it'll be exactly on Friday, but there could be an attack. Military attack, you know, Mars does rule military activity, but that's even the conflict in Mexico, you know, has a connection to this aspect in the background. So it's just general conflict, general unpredictability. You know, people's instincts could just be a little bit wild, a little bit more daring, brave, courageous, taking a risk in some way. But you should be cautious if you are taking a risk with this square, because there could be unpredictable results based on action. So be very careful of your instincts and what drives you and what you're passionate about. You know, try not to just jump headfirst into any kind of a situation. Even if you think it's a positive one, you just don't know the outcome with this type of a square. You also don't want to agitate other people or instigate a conflict with other people, because again, you just don't know how they're going to react, you know, and what's happening with this. And the thing about this, though, is like there's two different energies happening on Friday. The fact is that the moon is trine Venus next to Jupiter. You know, again, Jupiter and Venus are both exalted planets. These are very sweet positions here. And the moon is going through it, picking up on it. You know, there's a connection to pleasure, to even better relationship connections, or something of value, something, you know, this could be great for making purchases or indulging in something that's pleasurable and enjoyable. And yet, there's a totally different vibe with this Mars square Uranus. So it's a question on, will this moon trine Venus counterbalance some of the negativity that this Mars Uranus square could show? So we have both at the same time. We have something positive and pleasurable and enjoyable in a more private way, but then in a more group kind of friendship area of life, or again, politics, community stuff. That's where the friction is in the outer world. But on the other hand, Venus is ruling this Uranus in Taurus, and Venus has a trine from the moon at the time of the square. So it's tricky to know exactly, because with this kind of a dynamic, it can go either way. Again, and there can be a counterbalance where kind of evens it all out. But there's still a risk. There's still a chance of some sort of an attack or a conflict. Something gets triggered here potentially this week or maybe here by Friday. But again, it can happen any day of the week. So maybe it won't happen on Friday with this trine. But the chances are, just be aware and check yourself and just make sure you don't do anything overly risky or impulsive. And again, I think there's an overall rebelliousness in the air, but at least the moon is in a position that feels good and is strong, and the mood feels like it's okay. But the mood would still indicate the need for safety, security, and comfort, and not wanting to take a risk or do anything, too dangerous there. So we'll have to see, but just be aware of it in the background, and there could still be some Earth stuff or other events that pop off, including military or other attacks or something like that. But then, the moon trine Venus and trine Mercury. So there is this opening that's happening on Friday. Moon, Mercury, the feelings, the mood is in a good alignment with the thoughts and the intuition and the feelings of things. But then the moon runs into a square with Chiron, so that could be an issue that's happening, because this looks like a little more challenging by Friday evening, late afternoon, Friday evening. So possibility of injuries, accidents, getting hurt. So just be mindful of this with whatever you're doing on Friday all day long. And then the moon is sextile Uranus as the night goes on Friday night. A little bit of an opening there to feel more comfortable with changes and creating these innovative changes to your material life, physical life, money, resources, home, family, property stuff. The ability to create positive changes or feel comfortable with those changes. But then the moon is in conjunct to Mars, so we're having to adjust to that strong dynamic out in the world at the same time on Friday night. So Friday night is a mixed bag of different aspects, some easy, some not so easy, some irritation and adjustment all at the same time on Friday night. And then the last aspect is Venus reaching Mercury at 22 degrees of Pisces. So let me mention something about this as well. The Mercury retrograde at 22 degrees. Yes, if you have 22 Pisces, this retrograde is very much connected to you, and you need to process what this is about. But if you have 22 Scorpio, then this retrograde is in alignment with your planet there, or 22 Cancer, or 22 Taurus, 22 Capricorn, and even 22 Virgo. If you have any of those positions, this Mercury retrograde will be extremely important for you. If you have 22 Gemini, 22 Sagittarius, then this Mercury retrograde will bring up something that feels more of a challenge for you to process, reflect on, go back and take care of something perhaps over this next month and a half. Okay, so the Mercury-Venus, that's, again, a pretty sweet connection to communication, to sweet words. But it's also about the future. It's about this Mercury retrograde at 22 Pisces, because this is where Mercury will move forward past its shadow and move forward into new territory. So there could be something about value that's very important here that we're picking up on, thinking about or dealing with, something of value, resources, money, any kind of deals. Or again, something happening around this time of Friday night into the weekend that has us processing or reflecting on something of either relationship or, again, of value that will require us to kind of be in this process to think about what's coming up around this time for an extended period of time. But it's still a nice little alignment there on late Friday night into Saturday morning for communication and sweet words. Things like that. So this will lead us to a mood change by this weekend, because then we get to Saturday on February 28th, and the moon ingresses Leo for a change of the mood and circumstances for the next 2.5 days. And now that the moon is in Leo, it's being ruled by the sun in Pisces from behind the scenes. But as the moon is coming in here to Leo for the next 2.5 days, it's more of a bolder energy. The moon is waxing through Leo, so it's building and gaining light. So there's going to be a stronger emotional need for people to be expressive and creative. It does still lead to a more private behind the scenes energy, but I think that this will counterbalance some of that inward energy to be a little more outward. And again, this emotional need to express oneself and be creative, a little more bold, a little more dramatic mood in the air, big heart energy in the air. It's also a position that shows people probably want to have a little better time, have more fun, be more creative, even be a little more social during this phase. The moon does align nicely with this world point that's changing with Neptune and Saturn. So we're feeling comfortable in this moment, generally speaking, with what's going on here in this dynamic by Saturday morning, early morning. So, yeah, I think it's just going to put kind of this more outward, social, fun, creative kind of vibe in the air. People want to play. People want to, express their heart and passion in a bigger way. Mars square Uranus is still close enough and still activated in the background through the weekend as well. Plus Mars is, going to be reaching that last critical degree. So there's still this sense of an urgency that's building up in the background, and still a little bit of a rebellious, chaotic, unpredictable kind of action vibe in the background. And we see that the moon trine Neptune, trine Saturn, and then the moon is opposite Pluto. So the moon is really connecting to this world dynamic and the power dynamic on Saturday early morning. So this opposition that takes place mid-morning on Saturday, kind of an intensity, a power play, it is a social aspect, but there's undercurrents, that we can pick up on. There could be some manipulation, some drama, some intensity, and some transformation that's happening first thing on Saturday. And then the moon is in conjunct to the north node of destiny and in conjunct to the sun. So for the rest of the day on Saturday, which is most of the day, there might be some adjustments that we have to make from behind the scenes, something more private, to what we're dealing with in the outer world. Or irritations could be in the air, but we're having to adjust between what we're focused on and what the mood is happening, where the mood is, what we want, what we need. So that's Saturday, but looking at Saturday night, the moon, is in conjunction with the sun on Saturday night. So it could be a little bit of an irritating Saturday night for some people, but that's really the only major aspect. So the moon is in Leo. It could still be a social, creative, fun night, but with the opposition to Pluto that day, there's still edginess. It's still eclipse season of wild card season and unpredictability. So just always be more cautious during eclipse season when you're in groups of people and out on the town or something. So Saturday, February 28th, and then we get to Sunday on March 1st. There's just a few aspects. The moon is halfway through Leo, still this bold, dramatic, more outward, social, big-hearted energy, fun, creative kind of mood all through the weekend. But the moon is in conjunct to Mercury, so the mood, the feelings, kind of at odds with how we're thinking and processing. Mercury is finally backed into the 21st degree, so it's starting to build up momentum backwards now a little bit here. And so adjusting between the heart and the mind, and then the moon is trine Chiron there as the day goes on for Sunday. So there's a positive connection for self and ego and feeling about the self in a more positive way generally. And yet the moon is also in conjunct to Venus at the same time, so we're having to adjust to others and relationships, kind of having to adjust between desires and the mood and the feelings are on two different pages. But there is this one easy aspect with Moon trine Chiron, and that's all there is for Sunday. Until we get to Monday on March 2nd. And the moon is going to be changing signs, but before it does that, it has to make a lot of aspects. Of course, this is the day before the eclipse, so it's still like pretty intense. And the fact is that we have a lot of mutable energy now, especially as the moon will come into Virgo. So I think anxiety, restlessness, nervousness is going to be a thing, just this anxious energy in the background. Eclipses can do that, especially mutable eclipses. It's a time of changes, being more flexible and adaptable to changes all week long, but even more so next week as we reach this next eclipse. But first thing on Monday, early morning hours, the moon is squaring Uranus and building up that opposition to Mars, as Mars is at the last critical degree of Aquarius. So there's a sense of urgency. There's still a little bit of a radical kind of drive and passion and instinct to be more rebellious, to create changes. And so the moon is showing that generally the mood and the feelings are uncomfortable with too much change in this moment. Or there could also be disruptions, unpredictability, something happening that's not as stable early on Monday morning or late on Sunday night into Monday morning. And then that opposition to Mars can show the mood is going through something, some intensity, some conflict, potentially first thing on Monday. And then that leads to a big change of energy, both for Mars and the moon, as the moon will ingress Virgo. And right as the moon changes signs from Leo to Virgo, eclipse vibes are on from this point forward. Even though technically the eclipse will be the following day on Tuesday, I think it starts right here with the moon ingressing Virgo, ruled by this Mercury retrograde in debilitation. So as the moon comes into Virgo, this is the area where the south node is. This is going to be a south node eclipse. I'm going to talk more about it for next week's report as I do come back on Tuesday on the eclipse. But, again, it's kind of starting right now where this area of your chart, wherever you have Virgo, has been going through this process of trying to cleanse and reorganize and purge and just make this area better by releasing and letting go of things of the past. And we've been in this process for a while, for months. And so as the moon comes in here, beginning to be full and it's going to get eclipsed, we're going to see where we stand with this side of our chart, our Virgo side. But then it's also connected to the Pisces side as well. These two signs are going through major updates, major new beginnings. And we're going to start to see where we stand with our progress in our Virgo area of life. That still might require more work, before it's all done, and really we have the first half of the year of the South Node still in Virgo before we're done. And then we're going to have a Pisces lunar eclipse in August, which will refresh Pisces totally. So this is very important, but as the moon comes in here, again, we're starting to pick up on this need to make this area better by continuing to work on updating how we work. The details of our everyday life need to change. We also need to incorporate a new level of spirituality, perhaps, a new level of imagination and creativity that has more of a practical, realistic vibe about it now that Neptune is out of here and we can work with this in a whole different way. But the goal is to find a better balance between both of these polarities. And as the moon is in Virgo now for the next 2.5 days, reaching this eclipse, something is going to be exposed, something is going to start coming out that's not done, that we still need more work or more attention to, that will require, some sort of a realization will come out that will lead us to taking action and completing something here, but it's all about the practical side, looking at the details of what still needs to be done and restructured and worked on and processed and reviewing and reflecting. So whatever starts to come out with this Virgo moon, it's going to lead us to this Mercury retrograde of going back and continuing to reflect and review on things of the past that are closing out or finalizing, you know. So it's going to be very important, but at the same time, it's messy. It's difficult because of this Mercury in its debilitation and retrograde, you know, and ruling this eclipse. So this eclipse is going to bring out stuff that's a little bit chaotic, that's a little bit messy, unclear, you know, that leads to this process of working on things behind the scenes for a while before we're done with whatever starts to show here. And this includes health. Where do we stand with health? There's been a strong need to work on health routines. And this eclipse is going to show, you know, what's going on with health, what still needs to be worked on with health and changing of the systems and the structures. So work and service and health all become a stronger influence, and the need to create changes in those areas of your chart wherever you have Virgo and Pisces. So it's a little more challenging to find the details in this particular dynamic. It could be a little bit frustrating. We could feel a little more cloudy, uncertain, things like that. But again, I think that something will be exposed that was hidden that will come out. And again, I'll talk more about that for next week as I come back. And for the rest of the day on Monday, as the moon is now in Virgo, it is in conjunct to Neptune and Saturn and Pluto. So we're really picking up on a heavy vibe on Monday as the day goes on. And then Mars changes signs on Monday too, first thing in the morning. There's a change of gears for people. Mars coming into Pisces. So we've gotten past that strong dynamic of Mars square Uranus, and it's going to start to separate, but I think everything is going to be coming to a head based on this strong dynamic by Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So with Mars now in Pisces, the action, it's a little different. What motivates action? It's not as rebellious. It's more energetically motivated by circumstances, by influences that surround us, you know, that we're picking up on. The collective unconsciousness. This is the world dynamic that we're really influenced by very, very strongly during this time period. And by next week, the action, the drive, the passion gets sucked into that world dynamic of invisible influence and what drives us and pushes us forward. And again, it just increases the water to be even more and more water here again. And it's our last bit of water before we get to this next level of life, which is all about fire and the spark and taking major action this spring. And the world itself will be taking major action. You'll see it. So it just creates this overall mood change. But it's very strong, very passionate, very edgy, because it's also eclipse vibes. And again, we're picking up on the world dynamic in a difficult way with these inconjunctions as the moon is approaching that south node. And the moon does reach the south node, so it's a very karmic, fateful day on Monday, even by Monday evening and Monday night with moon south node. This is like a draining. The moon is so close to becoming full in eclipse, so there's a lot of light on it right now. And it's building up, and it's illuminating the past. It's illuminating this like area of the chart that's usually like a black hole and a draining of energy and releasing. And it's all about letting go, you know, creating changes in your Virgo area of life. You know, that's already been working on ongoing more and more. And this is a big part of it right here. But it's super karmic and fateful point. And that is the last aspect for the week ahead. By Monday night on March 2nd. And then the following day is the big eclipse. All right, so that's what I have for you. And again, it's kind of a crazy time period. There's unpredictability, surprises, changes. You have to be flexible and adaptable with this mutable energy. And we're in between seasons. So hope that was helpful. Appreciate you watching, and I wish you a great week ahead. Take good care.